The night Evelyn Hart realized her marriage was dying, she wasn't standing in a courtroom. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't throwing expensive crystal glasses across the walls of a Manhattan penthouse. She was sitting alone in a private hospital room, listening to the slow beep of a heart monitor while her father fought for his life. Outside the window, New York glittered with millions of lights. Inside the room, everything felt dark. Evelyn checked her phone again. No messages, no missed calls, nothing from her husband. For the 11th time that night, she dialed Adrian Hart's number, straight to voicemail. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. The man who could answer a $1 billion investor call at 3 in the morning couldn't answer his wife, while her father lay unconscious in intensive care. The doctor entered quietly. Mrs. Hart? Evelyn stood immediately. Is he okay? The next 24 hours are critical. The doctor's voice was careful, professional, too careful. Evelyn knew exactly what that meant. Her father might not survive. The realization hit her harder than she expected, because Richard Bennett wasn't just her father. He was her best friend, the man who had raised her after her mother's death, the man who taught her how to negotiate contracts before she learned how to drive, the man who built a successful hotel consulting empire from nothing and taught his daughter that intelligence was worth more than beauty. And now he was lying motionless behind a glass wall, while her husband was nowhere to be found. At midnight, her phone finally buzzed. Relief exploded inside her chest. She grabbed it instantly. Then everything inside her froze. The message wasn't from Adrian. It was a social media notification. Someone had tagged Adrian in a photo. Evelyn opened it. The world stopped. There he was. Her husband, her billionaire husband, not in Singapore, not at an emergency board meeting, not negotiating a deal. He was standing on the deck of a luxury yacht in Dubai, his arm wrapped around a woman who looked 25 at most. Blonde, beautiful, half dressed, smiling directly into the camera. The caption read, "Finally enjoying life with the man who makes me feel like a queen." Thousands of comments flooded below the image. Power couple, relationship goals, beautiful couple, perfect together. Evelyn stared at the screen. Then she zoomed in. Adrian wasn't just standing beside the woman, he was kissing her. The timestamp showed the photo had been uploaded 30 minutes earlier, exactly 30 minutes after. Evelyn had left him another voicemail, begging him to call, but because her father was in the hospital, her hands began to shake, not from sadness, not from heartbreak. Something colder, something far more dangerous. For 14 years, she had loved Adrian Hart. She had supported him before the private jets, before the Forbes covers, before the $1 billion hospitality empire, before the luxury penthouses and celebrity friendships. She remembered helping him build financial projections at a tiny apartment kitchen table when nobody believed in him. She remembered working 18-hour days beside him. She remembered postponing her own career because somebody needed to keep the company alive during its earliest years. And now he was kissing another woman while her father fought for his life. The hospital suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too suffocating. Evelyn walked out into the hallway. The polished floor reflected her designer heels. A nurse passed, then another. Life continued. As if her world hadn't just collapsed, her phone buzzed again. This time it was Adrian. A video call. Evelyn stared at the screen, then answered. Adrian appeared smiling. Behind him, she could see blue water, luxury villas, palm trees, and movement. A woman's movement. Hey, babe. He sounded relaxed, happy. Sorry, I've been busy. Busy. Evelyn almost laughed, bussy, kissing another woman on a yacht. My father had a heart attack. The smile disappeared for half a second, then returned. I'm sorry to hear that. Hear that. Not sorry about her father, sorry to hear it. The difference was impossible to ignore. When were you planning to tell me you were in Dubai? Silence, a tiny silence, but enough to confirm everything. Evelyn, no. Her voice was calm, dangerously calm. I want you to think carefully before your next sentence. Adrian looked away, and that told her everything. Finally, he sighed. Evelyn, it's complicated. Every cheating husband in history had probably said those exact words. It's not what you think. There it was, the second lie. Evelyn smiled, not because she was amused, because suddenly she felt nothing. No tears, no heartbreak, nothing. Just clarity. The terrifying clarity that arrives when a person finally stops making excuses for someone they love. Who is she? Another pause. Her name is Chloe. Of course, she had a name, a real person. Not a mistake, not an accident, a relationship, an entire second life. How long? Adrian rubbed his forehead. 6 months. The answer should have shattered her. Instead, it made everything easier. 6 months. That meant every anniversary dinner, every business trip, every apology, every promise, every lie. 6 months of lies. Does she know you're married? Adrian didn't answer, which was answer enough. Evelyn nodded slowly. Then she ended the call. Just like that. No screaming. No screaming. No tears. Nothing. The silence afterward felt strangely peaceful, like the moment after a storm destroys everything and leaves only wreckage behind. Because now she knew exactly where she stood. The next morning, Richard Bennett woke up, weak, exhausted, but alive. Evelyn nearly cried from relief. Her father squeezed her hand. You look terrible. Even after a heart attack, he was still Richard Bennett. She laughed for the first time in days. Thanks. You caught Adrian cheating. It wasn't a question. Evelyn stared. Richard smiled weakly. You're making the same face your mother made when she caught her business partner stealing from her. How do you always know? Because you're my daughter. He studied her, then spoke quietly. What are you going to do? That question followed Evelyn all day. What was she going to do? Cry? Beg? Fight for a marriage Adrian had already abandoned? No. By evening, she had made her decision. She drove to a private bank in Midtown Manhattan. The manager personally escorted her to a secure conference room. Miss Bennett. Not Mrs. Hart, Miss Bennett. Her original identity. Her real identity. The identity she had almost forgotten. The manager placed a folder before her. Your father instructed us never to discuss this account unless you requested access, personally. Evelyn opened the folder, then froze. The number staring back at her seemed unreal. $48 million, her grandfather's trust. Money that Adrian never knew existed. Money that legally belonged only to Evelyn. Money her father had protected for decades. Suddenly the room felt very different. Because for the first time since discovering the affair, Evelyn saw a future where she wasn't dependent on Adrian. A future where she didn't need his money, didn't need his permission, didn't need him at all. The bank manager smiled politely. Would you like to activate the account? Evelyn looked out the window. Far below, Manhattan moved like a living machine. Ambitious people, hungry people, dangerous people. For years, she had played the role of billionaire wife, the supportive spouse, the elegant accessory, the woman standing quietly beside the powerful man. But before Adrian, she had been Evelyn Bennett, the youngest hospitality strategist ever hired by a major luxury hotel group. A woman whose ideas generated millions. A woman who built businesses. A woman who won. She looked back at the manager. Yes. The manager nodded. Very good. He slid another document toward her. Evelyn signed it, then another, and another. With each signature awakened inside her. Something Adrian had forgotten existed. Something dangerous. When the final document was complete, the manager stood. Congratulations, Miss Bennett. Evelyn closed the folder. No. The manager looked confused. Evelyn smiled, the first genuine smile she'd worn since discovering the betrayal. Don't congratulate me yet. Outside, evening sunlight reflected off Manhattan skyscrapers like gold. Somewhere in Dubai, Adrian Hart was probably celebrating with his mistress, probably convinced his wife would cry, beg, accept humiliation, maybe even forgive him. What Adrian didn't know was that while he was busy destroying their marriage, Evelyn had just gained access to enough money to destroy everything he thought he owned. And tomorrow morning, she was meeting the chairman of a struggling luxury hotel chain that Adrian had spent 2 years trying desperately to acquire. A hotel chain that controlled the single most important piece of his future expansion plan. And, if Evelyn's calculations were correct, by the end of the month, she might own it first. The next morning, Adrian Hart woke up in a $70,000 a night villa overlooking the Persian Gulf, believing he had won. He believed his wife was sitting alone in New York crying. He believed the divorce would be simple. He believed the future belonged to him and Chloe. Most importantly, he believed Evelyn knew nothing about business anymore. That assumption would become the most expensive mistake of his life. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Evelyn stepped out of black Mercedes in front of an aging limestone building on Manhattan's Upper East Side. The sign above the entrance read, Montclair Hospitality Group. To most people, it looked ordinary. To Adrian Hart, it was the final missing piece of a $1 billion expansion plan. For 2 years, he had been trying to buy the company. For 2 years, he had failed. Montclair owned exclusive management rights to seven ultra luxury historic resorts spread across Europe and the Caribbean. Without those properties, Adrian's international hospitality empire would never dominate the luxury market. Without Montclair, his grand vision remained incomplete. And today, Evelyn intended to change everything. Inside, she was escorted into a private conference room where an elderly man sat beside floor to ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. William Montclair, 72 years old, founder, legend. 3 months later, Adrian Hart stood at the center of a ballroom filled with investors, journalists, celebrities, and some of the most powerful figures in the luxury hospitality industry. Everything looked perfect. On the surface, the massive crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Cameras flashed. Waiters moved through the crowd, carrying champagne worth thousands of dollars per bottle. The launch of Hart International's newest luxury resort project was being broadcast across financial media worldwide. This was supposed to be Adrian's crowning achievement, the deal that would cement his legacy, the deal that would prove he was still untouchable. But as he adjusted his cufflinks backstage, an uncomfortable feeling settled deep in his stomach. Something felt wrong, very wrong. For the last 6 weeks, investors had been asking unusual questions. Several major partners had quietly withdrawn from negotiations. Three banks suddenly requested additional audits. A European investment fund unexpectedly delayed financing. Nothing catastrophic. Not yet, just enough to make Adrian nervous. Across the city, Evelyn Bennett stood in front of a giant window inside the executive office of Montclair Hospitality Group. The skyline stretched endlessly before her. Behind her, a dozen executives sat around a conference table. Every screen displayed the same image: Adrian Hart live, preparing to unveil the biggest project of his career. William Montclair smiled. Are you ready? Evelyn took a slow breath. 3 months ago, she had been a betrayed wife. Today, she controlled enough leverage to alter the future of an entire industry. And Adrian still had no idea. Let's begin. Within seconds, lawyers in New York, London, Paris, Dubai, and Singapore started sending documents, contracts, audit reports, ownership disclosures, financial analyses. Years of hidden information finally began reaching people who had never seen it before. The first call reached a major investor. The second reached a bank. The third reached Hart International's board of directors. The fourth reached several journalists. Like dominoes, falling, one after another. The ballroom applause suddenly erupted as Adrian stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he smiled confidently. Thank you for joining us tonight. The crowd applauded. Adrian launched into a polished presentation: luxury, expansion, future growth, international acquisitions, rimcord breaking projections. Everything appeared flawless. Then his phone vibrated once, twice, twice, 3 times. Ignoring it, he continued speaking. But the vibration didn't stop. Board members sitting in the front row suddenly looked distracted. Several investors began checking their phones. One executive quietly stood and left the room. Adrian felt a chill crawl up his spine. Something was happening. He just didn't know what. Back in Manhattan, Evelyn watched the live stream calmly. William Montclair leaned closer. The board just received the audit package. A small smile appeared on Evelyn's face. Good. Months earlier, while examining Hart International's financial records through information she legally obtained during divorce proceedings, Evelyn had discovered something unexpected. Adrian hadn't just been cheating, he'd been desperate. To keep his empire expanding, he had quietly borrowed enormous sums against future growth projections, billions. If those projections failed, everything would collapse: the hotels, the properties, the acquisitions, everything. And Adrian had hidden many of those risks from investors. Not illegal enough for prison, but devastating enough for confidence. In business, confidence was everything. Lose confidence, lose everything. Back in the ballroom, Adrian's chief financial officer rushed onto the stage. His face looked pale. Terrified, the audience noticed immediately. Whispers spread through the room. The CFO handed Adrian a phone. What? Adrian whispered. You need to see this. The screen displayed an emergency notice. Several financing agreements had been suspended. Effective immediately. Adrian stared. Impossible. Then another notification arrived. A major investment fund had withdrawn. Another followed, then another. The ballroom suddenly felt much warmer. much smaller. For the first time in years, Adrian felt genuine fear. Across social media, financial news was spreading rapidly. Questions, concerns, speculation. Journalists smelled blood. Investors hated uncertainty. The market reacted instantly. Hart International stock began falling, not crashing, but falling. Enough to trigger panic. Meanwhile, Chloe sat inside a luxury penthouse overlooking Central Park. Her phone buzzed constantly. Moss, calls, news, alerts. She turned on the television. Adrian's event was everywhere. But something else caught her attention. A financial analyst discussing hidden debt exposure, potential liquidity concerns, expansion risks. Her stomach tightened because Adrian had promised her something: security, a future, a perfect life. Suddenly, none of it looked certain anymore. Her phone rang. Adrian. She answered instantly. Adrian, what's happening? His voice sounded different, panicked. For the first time since she met him. It's temporary, is it? Yes. But even Adrian didn't sound convinced. After the call ended, Chloe walked toward the giant windows. Something finally clicked. Over the last few months, Adrian had become increasingly obsessed, more aggressive, more paranoid, more desperate. And every time Evelyn's name appeared, Adrian reacted strangely, not like a man who had won, like a man terrified of losing. Back at Montclair headquarters, Evelyn received another update. One of Adrian's largest lenders requested immediate meetings. Another investor suspended future funding. Two board members demanded explanations. William laughed softly. He's bleeding. Evelyn remained calm. No, she looked at the screen. He's just realizing he's mortal. The next morning, headlines exploded. Questions surround Hart International expansion. Plants investors. Sick clarity on billion-dollar projects. Market analysts. Express concerns nothing, accused Adrian of wrongdoing. Nothing illegal. Just doubt. And doubt was more dangerous than scandal. Scandals could be explained. Doubt grew. That afternoon, Adrian stormed into Hart International headquarters. Employees avoided eye contact. Executives looked nervous. The atmosphere felt toxic. For years, people had followed him unquestioningly. Now they were watching, evaluating, wondering. A board meeting was called immediately. The room felt hostile. One director spoke first. Why weren't we informed about these risks? They were under control. Clearly, they weren't. Another director slid a report across the table. We've also learned Montclair Hospitality recently secured exclusive management rights to 3 European property we intended to acquire. Adrian froze. What? The director looked confused. You didn't know? For the first time, everything connected. Montclair. The delays, the investors, the timing, the interference. And suddenly one face appeared in his mind. Evelyn, impossible. Then again, was it? Adrian remembered the woman he married years ago, before she became his wife, before she stepped away from business. The woman who used to dominate boardrooms, the woman investors respected, the woman who could analyze deals faster than entire teams. A cold realization washed over him. What if she never disappeared? What if she had simply been waiting? That evening, Adrian drove directly to Evelyn's penthouse. The doorman refused entry. Miss Bennett isn't accepting visitors. Tell her it's her husband. The doorman smiled politely. Former husband. The words hit harder than expected. Eventually, Adrian left, but not before looking upward, toward the illuminated windows high above Manhattan. For the first time, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: helplessness, because somewhere inside that building sat a woman who seemed to know his next move before he made it. A woman who wasn't reacting anymore. A woman controlling the board. And deep down, Adrian finally understood something terrifying. He hadn't abandoned a weak wife. He had awakened a rival. 1 year later, the most powerful people in the global hospitality industry gathered inside the Grand Monarch Hotel in London. Presidents, billionaires, royal family representatives, private equity giants, luxury tourism executives, media companies, fashion icons, celebrities. Every major business publication in the world had reporters covering the event. The Global Luxury Hospitality Summit was where empires were measured, where reputations were built, and sometimes destroyed. For Adrian Hart, tonight was supposed to be redemption. For Evelyn Bennett, tonight was something entirely different. It was the final chapter. Backstage, Adrian adjusted his tie while staring at his reflection. The man looking back barely resembled the billionaire who once dominated magazine covers. The last year had been Brutal. His company's stock had lost nearly 60% of its value. You. Multiple expansion projects had collapsed. Several investors had abandoned him. Banks no longer treated him like a king. The private jet was gone. The Dubai villa was gone. Two luxury properties had been sold. His empire still existed, but it was bleeding, and everyone knew it. The worst part wasn't losing money. The worst part was watching Evelyn become everything he once believed she couldn't be. Every financial publication now talked about her. Every business conference wanted her as a speaker. Every investor wanted access to her projects. Every luxury hotel group wanted partnerships. Somehow, the woman he had dismissed had become the most respected strategist in the entire industry. The doors opened. A crowd entered. Then suddenly, the room became quiet. People were staring toward the entrance. Adrian turned, and his heart stopped. Evelyn had arrived. She wore a stunning ivory designer suit, tailored perfectly to her silhouette, elegant, powerful, untouchable, no flashy jewelry, no desperate need for attention, just confidence. The kind money couldn't buy, the kind success created. Beside her walked William Montclair. Behind them followed executives from 3 continents, major investors, industry leaders, people who controlled billions, and every single one of them treated Evelyn like she was royalty. Camera flashes exploded. Reporters rushed forward. Evelyn, Evelyn, Miss Bennett, can you comment on the Montclair Global acquisition? What does tonight's announcement mean? Is it true you're launching the largest luxury resort project in history? Evelyn smiled politely, but didn't answer because she didn't need to. Her success spoke louder than words. Across the ballroom, Adrian felt something twist inside his chest. Regret. Pure regret. Because suddenly, he remembered another version of Evelyn, the woman who helped him build his first business plan, the woman who worked beside him when nobody believed in him, the woman who used to look at him like he was her entire world. And he had thrown her away. For what? A temporary fantasy, a younger woman, an ego boost. Nothing more. The summit officially began. One speaker after another took the stage. Then came the final announcement of the evening, the announcement everyone had been waiting for. The host smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, the ballroom fell silent. It is my honor to introduce the woman who has completely transformed the luxury hospitality industry over the past 12 months. Thunderous applause erupted. Evelyn Bennett. The entire room stood, a standing ovation, hundreds of people, many of whom once knew her only as Adrian Hart's wife. Now they knew her by her own name. Evelyn walked onto the stage, calm, graceful, powerful. She stood beneath the spotlight and looked across the audience. Then her eyes briefly found Adrian just for a second. That second felt like a lifetime. Then she looked away, as though he no longer mattered, and somehow that hurt more than hatred ever could. The giant screen behind her illuminated. A new company logo appeared. Monarch Global Resorts. Crowd gasped, because everyone knew what that meant. Monarch Global was about to become the largest independent luxury hospitality company in the world. The acquisition value appeared $12. Volt. 4 billion room exploded. Rotors immediately started typing. Investors exchanged shocked looks. Executives whispered excitedly. History had just been made. Evelyn waited patiently, then she began speaking. 2 years ago, her voice echoed through the ballroom. I sat alone in a hospital while someone I loved made choices that changed my life forever. The room became silent. You can spend years believing your value depends on someone else's ability to see it. She paused, looking across the audience. But the truth is, her voice softened. Your value exists whether they recognize it or not. The applause started immediately, then grew louder and louder and louder. Many people were standing again, including several women wiping tears from their eyes. Evelyn continued, the greatest mistake anyone can make is assuming kindness means weakness. More applause. The quietest person in the room may be the one building something extraordinary. The audience erupted. Across the ballroom, Adrian felt like every word was aimed directly at him because it was true. He had mistaken loyalty for weakness, love for dependence, support for submission. He had spent years underestimating the one person who knew him better than anyone. And now she stood above him. Untouchable, the speech ended. The crowd rose again. Another standing ovation, longer this time. Louder. More emotional. When Evelyn left the stage, dozens of investors surrounded her immediately. Adrian watched from a distance. Alone, completely alone. Then something unexpected happened. A woman approached him, Chloe, his former mistress. He hadn't seen her in months. She looked different, older somehow, more realistic, less glamorous. Life had finally reached her too. She smiled sadly. You should go talk to her. Adrian laughed bitterly. Why? Because you'll regret it forever if you don't. Before he could answer, Chloe walked away and disappeared into the crowd. Adrian stood motionless, then finally started walking. Each step felt heavier. Eventually, he reached Evelyn. She was standing near a giant window overlooking London's skyline, alone, for the first time all evening. Evelyn. She turned calmly, no anger, no bitterness, no emotion at all, which somehow hurt most. Adrian swallowed hard. I owe you an apology. She remained silent. I was arrogant. Silence. I was selfish. Silence. I thought success made me important. Still silence. Adrian looked down. For the first time in years, he had no speech, no negotiation, no strategy, just truth. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Evelyn looked out toward the city lights, then smiled slightly. Not cruelly, not triumphantly, just peacefully. That's probably true. The honesty hit him like a punch. Adrian laughed painfully, a laugh mixed with regret. You don't need me anymore. Evelyn turned back toward him. No. Then she added something he would remember for the rest of his life. The difference is, I never did. The words shattered him, because they were true. Everything she became, everything she built, everything she achieved. She had done herself. The strength had always been there. He simply failed to see it. Moments later, investors called her away. Business partners, executives, future opportunities. A future that no longer included him. Adrian watched her disappear into the crowd, and, for the first time, understood the full cost of his choices. Not the money, not the hotels, not the empire, her. He had lost her, forever. 3 years later, a cold November afternoon, Adrian sat alone in a small apartment overlooking Queens. No luxury penthouse, no private elevators, no personal staff, just silence. A newspaper lay on the kitchen table. The front page business section featured a familiar photograph. Evelyn Bennett, standing beside the opening of her newest luxury resort, tamed the most influential woman in hospitality. Estimated net worth $4.8 billion. The articles described her as visionary, brilliant, transformational, a leader. Adrian stared at the image for a long time, then folded the newspaper carefully. A small smile appeared. Not happiness, acceptance, because he finally understood something. Evelyn never destroyed him. He destroyed himself. She simply stopped standing in the way. Outside the window, New York continued moving, buzzy, loud, alive. And somewhere across that city, the woman he once underestimated was building another empire. Without him. Exactly as she was always meant to. If you were Evelyn, would you have forgiven Adrian after everything he did, or would you have made the same choice she did? What was the biggest mistake Adrian made? Cheating, underestimating Evelyn, or believing success made him untouchable? Let us know in the comments.